Okay. Good afternoon. This is Ron Good. Thank you for allowing me to do a short presentation here. I have a beautiful video, about 2 minutes, but we're having technical difficulties, so I'm going to start with the PowerPoint. And so I am from the North Fork Mono tribe. You should have on the screen cultural fire and restoration practices. I got a couple, 2 or 3, 4 of my team members, and we've been doing restoration since '91 in our local area, and meadow restoration since 2003, and cultural burning all along. So anyway, this is what our presentation is going to be on today, basically showing the improvements and the enhancements that our work has done. Are we good, Catherine? Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great. Go ahead.
Okay.
And just a reminder to everyone else, please mute your lines. We'll have time for questions and discussions at the end of the presentation, and it'll help with the sound quality.
So we've been doing cultural burning in 3 different counties: Mariposa, well, actually 4, I guess. Mariposa, Madera, Fresno, and Tulare. And this cultural burning we've been doing burning with the Sequoia National Park for 2 years. And we're out basically online. I'm not suited out because I have not been in the greatest shape while I'm recovering, but I'm right there on the line and giving instructions and helping to coordinate. So what makes our burn in Sequoia Park a cultural burn is we are burning under 2 sets of blue oaks, and we have done a monitoring process. So we have about 115 blue oaks that we burned under one section called Unit 6, and about 91 or so blue oaks and 1 golden oak down under another unit called Unit 9. What we're monitoring for is the production of acorn, and it's taken me actually several years working with the park, just as I have been working with the forest for a large number of decades, and trying to convince them that our resources out here feed everybody, you know, wildlife, Native American, even community, general community, come out to harvest. And, you know, what are we doing to enhance that harvest? And what type of harvest are you actually getting out of in your area, and whom are you feeding? So a lot of these questions always have a blank stare and no response, because these agencies can't tell me the species that are out there that are being fed, what they eat, whether it's the acorn itself or the acorn growing new shoots. And so that was a pretty contentious point, that when we look at in the blue oak area, where are the new shoots that are coming up? What new growth do you have, and at what point? And then your dead growth. We're talking about park here. So parks have all kinds of crazy policies that they've been living by for quite some time. And, you know, it's like, well, dead trees fall on the ground, they automatically become habitat. I said, no, they automatically become a fire hazard. So that doesn't always create a habitat. And so they won't cut down the dead trees, they won't cut up the dead limbs, there's all kinds of they won't. And we've been addressing that, and I addressed from the beginning of what is a cultural burn and the fact that we need to clean all this up. And because the dead trees pick up space from new trees to regrow. And so they might think that dead trees don't, are habitat trees, but you find the habitat tree, and so here on this very first one, you'll see in the middle a broken tree trunk, and that's just, part of one habitat, but we have identified 3 full habitat trees that were being utilized by a number of different species. So that's, we started this burn in 2017. We actually did 11 burns that year, but we only counted 2 of them as being cultural, and those are the ones that we monitored. So having monitored these units last late November, early December, we were after the acorn drop, and I'm pushing for mid-October this year. It took me that long to get them to allow me to go out there and count the acorn as far as what trees produced acorn and which ones did not. We ended up with 48.5% on Unit 6 and 36% on Unit 9 that were acorn-producing trees. Those are a little bit on the lower end of tree production, acorn production, but at the same time, pretty high in terms of how much acorn is being produced. And these were big, good-sized blue oaks. So we're hoping now that we've had this burn underneath them, we're going to re-monitor this October to get a better look at what was done and what the accomplishment is. Smoke, highly interested in how much smoke, because the trees need that smoke as well as fire. This is Unit 9 and gives you a better idea of the burn underneath, but you can also see the dead trees they have, the limbs. We're working on that point of getting those things cleaned up. It's just maybe by year 3 I might actually convince them. This was another part of Unit 9 as we went down slope. We also had invasive plants and grasses, so we had to get rid of those as well. And we did have some cultural plants, such as soakroot and a few other plants. And but a real key issue here was that this year we were looking for young trees and didn't find them within our burned area. Where we found them was immediately next to the burned area, and we've got a whole bunch of young shoots coming up. And then we also had milkweed and a few other plants all coming up outside of our burn. This year we went back in to conduct one more burn under Unit 9 after they did some cleanup and re-smoke it. So we told them, now I'm trying to convince them that a cultural burn, that we need to now rest it for 2 or 3 years and then see how this works. So this is what we've been doing with Sequoia Park, and I believe we made great strides in applying cultural fire in the park. Since 2003, we've been on one of our meadows, and we've been mostly volunteer work. So I've got a few pictures to share in showing the contrast of enhancement over the years. This is 2013 from our existing spring when we took the meadow over. In 2003, it was totally inundated. It looked like the background back there where you couldn't see through it. And this is 10 years later. We've actually eliminated all the littler trees. Now we're working on the big trees. We didn't have water running, and this particular meadow has been designated as a cultural site because it is the #1 spot within the forest where the deer grass grows. So in 2014, Blessing the Spring. In 2018, via the drought hitting us a little bit, PG&E came through and hit us a whole lot harder because they were nervous about drought trees hitting their telephone lines, so they took out some drought trees and a whole bunch of live trees and then made quite a mess. So that took me a year to basically work and get them to clean everything up. So that was 2017, and so in 2018, this is what we're starting to look like. This is on the top part of our meadow. 2013 again, this is a middle view. We've been using volunteer work to come in and clean up. I use volunteers from elementary, middle school, high school, college, community, Forest Service, tribe, anybody and anybody that wishes to be a volunteer. A couple of years later, after our volunteer work, we began to open it up. And 2018 comes back to giving us this really nice view again. Went back in the first 10 years or so, the Forest Service kept trying to say that this was not a meadow, it's just an ecosystem, meadow ecosystem. But now that we have running water year-round, even during the drought, they finally are convinced that it's a meadow again. Again, this is 2014. We're looking at our golden oaks and how thick they were. Lots of new growth, of course, which was good. Then we set about to clean them up, raise the canopy on them, brush them out, and voila, this is 2018. In 2017, these trees were abundant with golden oak, and we had a great harvest. You can also see a couple, 2 or 3 black oaks in the back. We're still working on those, but we've got them looking good. They're not producing at the rate that we want them to, but this year we're expecting that to happen. If you're wondering what a golden oak is, we always say it looks like it has a Spanish sombrero on it. It is pretty much in the same species as what is known as canyon oak, but canyon oak acorns do not have the sombrero. They have a regular cap on them like black oak, but they're a smaller nut than black oak. So talking about our black oaks, this was 2015. We were beginning to open it up and clear out a lot of the small brush and trees. The one picture on the right is a little fuzzy, but you can see that that tree did not look too healthy. It pretty much was dying at that point in time. In 2016, we're trying to recover it. It did produce some acorns and about 25 pounds. A good oak should give us a couple hundred. And so you can also begin to see that we've been clearing it and working it. And in 2018, this is now what she looks like. Looking quite beautiful. We're expecting a good crop out of it this coming year. When we work on the meadow, so many things that are in play that, like young shoots, for instance, as I was saying earlier, that it's not just about the acorn that the animals come to eat. These are, we leave a number of young seedlings coming up. The deer bring their babies over here, and up to about 3 to 5 years, you'll see the places where they've been nibbling and stems that are broken, leaves that are chewed on. We look at a deer's life cycle. Takes a mother 2.5 years to have a fawn, and then it takes 8 months gestation, and then the baby comes out, so you're looking at about 3 years. So if you have a 3-year-old seedling like this one, that baby comes and is brought back by the mother, and then when they grow up and they have babies, they bring their babies back. So during that time, we move around on the meadow, cutting some of these seedlings back and then sometimes burning a few of them. And then they get new growth, so that every 3 to 5 years they have a new growth. And then some seedlings we allow to keep growing until they get bigger. So this is a new seedling that has just come up, and you can see how healthy those leaves are. In the meadow, we have lots of things going on. We always say you build it and they'll come. So we started out on this Crane Valley meadow with about 6 resources that were semi-harvestable. We now are closing in on 100 different plant and animal species that utilize the meadow, and that's over the last 15 years of work on it. It's pretty exciting. Our Forest Service botanist, Joanna Klein, uses this for her educational and her own self-well-being. Just comes out there and sits down and talks to all her little babies out here. So it's really, really beautiful when you are working on a meadow of this type. We still have some invasive plants like velvet grass and such comes back here and there. We've had Scotch broom and bull thistle. We work on it every year. Everybody that goes out there pulls on them and whacks them down. And sometimes we've had 2 burns on one part and another burn on a lower part with the Forest Service on cultural burning. And so we get a lot of rejuvenation of our medicines and other plants. The native grasses have come back so thick that they will push the invasives back out. So this is yarrow that we're looking at, nature's neosporin. The California mint, We have actually several mints. I have a coyote mint and a skull head mint, and I don't like that one. It gives you a headache. But anyway, there's probably more than that. With just numerous different kind of plants that are growing, from bracken fern to a 3-leaf clover, a 4-leaf clover. We got a number of other plants, but the mint we harvest about 3 times a year when it's up. That's how much mint we're able to take. 2 or 3 bags of mint out, and still plenty for growth. Wait, seems like I'm missing a picture. Okay, here we go. Back to 2017 and the damage that we had by the PG&E and working on their lines. We had them laid out in the middle of our deer grass and our older crop that was producing very well. So now we're in recovery. Some of that is starting to come back. It'll take a couple of more years for it to be restored. This particular crop we have been working on for a number of years. We thought we had it pretty nice. Actually harvested a little bit from it. The shoots for basketry. And then, of course, this happened. But the reality here is that this old section of the deer grass was really seed, and so it has seeded the whole meadow now, and we have deer grass growing everywhere. What we don't have yet are the shoots that are coming out of each bunch. So that's still our objective. And this is one of the original deer grass sites on this meadow, and you can see how many bunches are there. Right adjacent to this one is where the Indian village was at, and a nice spring, another nice spring. Do we have any questions on the PowerPoint, or what I'm trying to present, or what we're trying to get at?
I'll open up the line. I'll unmute, and we also have, let's see, we have some questions coming through on the chat box, Ron, that I can read. So, again, please try to mute your line if you're not planning on asking a question. So Ron, the question is, does application of smoke kill bark beetles, and to what extent are the current California wildfires killing back bark beetles?
That's 2 or 3 great questions all in one. The smoke does slow everything down, including the bark beetle. One of the things on this particular meadow, after all these years, like I said, we started in 2003. Last year was the first year that we found the mantid. The mantid is the praying mantis. On all of our other meadows, we have 6 meadows that we've been restoring. We have the praying mantis is very prevalent, and the bark beetle is very minimal. So it's our thoughts that the praying mantis eats the bark beetle, and wherever we find them loaded on a meadow, the tree infestation is pretty light. So on this meadow, we had only 2 or 3 little cedars that were affected by the drought. Everything outside of the meadow was all orange. And then slowly it started to change a little bit. So now the mantid has showed up, and hopefully he's going to do his thing to keep them down. As far as the wildfires are concerned, I do know that they are hitting pockets of the drought trees. Unfortunately, it goes through them so fast that it's not necessarily burning them up, and they may be actually catching up to some of the live beetles, I'm sure, that are still out there. So that probably will definitely slow them down in those areas, but it's unfortunate that we have to have that type of wildfire just to slow down the beetle. A lot of the beetle interaction has to do with management practices. I'm not being ornery or bad-mouthing. It's not something I won't say in a public meeting with the Forest Service, who I work with all the time. But wherever the forest has been out thinning, rather it's 10 acres, 100 acres, very little drought and bug-infested trees during the drought. But where they hadn't touched it and the trees were just thick, then they all died. So that's just something to take into consideration. Good question.
Thanks, Ron. And if there's anyone else on the phone, I know we have folks with a lot of knowledge about this who also has information to share. Please go ahead. So, Ron, we have another question, which is, did you use any chemical controls or only fire and mechanical control for exotics?
No chemicals. We are opposed to all chemical use. If you can't get out there and pull it, talk to it, whatever you got to do, you just go out there year after year after year. It's what we call our traditional cultural practices, that when the Native American was living on the land, they could go out there and talk to these plants and tell them that you don't belong here. This is not where you belong. But then if they won't go away, they get stubborn. Well, they're out there every day. So we have to be out there every day and working with them and doing everything that we can. I think and I'm not. I always do my disclaimer that I'm not bad-mouthing anybody, but you can't work out there and just go out and do your part of whatever your job is and then walk away. It's got to be a holistic type of a job that, reach over and grab a plant, reach over and take a shovel with you, do something that's going to help the meadow as a whole, even though you might be fixing the road or whatever it is. The mindset has to change in our workers. I mean, when I'm out there and I'm working on the meadows, every single person that comes, whether they're a volunteer or paid employee of the tribe, I go down and I buy books from the Forest Service, the $30 book of all the different plants and animals and beetles and insects, and I give everybody a book and tell them, look, this is your ecological Bible. Look at it, study it. You see this bug, you see this plant, you need to come back here and tell us what you see. So that's how we do our monitoring. And I don't care if you're coming back to get gas for your saw or bringing your saw back to get it worked on or whatever you're doing. You need to be always telling us what you saw, what you come across, and what's out there, who's out there. So we train our people. They may not have ever been scientists before. They are now. And so that's just to learn how to observe and see all the things that why are you out there? What are you doing out here? You're not just out here for a job. You know, it's more than a job. And so that's what we try to train our own people to be that way. And I can turn loose any one of my tribal team members, and they'll give you a good talk, and I sit back and just listen to them and like, all right, they were listening. This is good, you know. So that's how we look at it.
Thanks, Ron. We've got another question that just came in. It's what recommendations do you have for working with federal and state agencies? If someone just had some music come on, they could.
They might have put us on hold.
Yeah, see if I can figure out who that is. 1 second, folks. Let me get muted here. Okay. What recommendations do you have for working with federal, state agencies in doing similar restoration work in other areas to bring together tribal peoples and government agencies working together to work on common goals? And if anyone else on the line has an answer to this question as well after Ron's done, that'd be great to hear. Did you get that question, Ron? Ron? We may have lost Ron. Is there anyone else on the phone? Oh,
no,
there you go.
I'm here.
Okay.
I've been talking to myself.
Oh, did you hear the question?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
All right, sorry about that. Like I was saying to myself, it takes years to sit at the table and convince these folks that, you know, there's alternatives, and that calling us stakeholders, calling us partners is not something that you write down on a piece of paper or verbally say. If you're going to do a partnership, it's a partnership. It means that how we think is how you think, and how you think needs to be how we think. So agencies, federal or state, they don't like that part. You know, it's okay if you think like us, but we have to think like you. But at the same time, you know, oh, we like the word traditional, you know, ecological knowledge, DEK. What does that mean? We've been over this before, and, you know, it comes back to cultural practices that we're doing out there. And again, you're not just doing your job, but so when we're burning, when we're doing a cultural burn, and we do small fires, we don't do large fires. And then when we're done, we rake all that up, all that ash and topsoil, and then we'll wet it down, and then when the rains come, they'll take care of it. So you should have a return within minimally 1 week to definitely no more than 1 month. You already have new shoots coming back up. So when I asked the forest about when they're doing restoration work, what are they doing? You know, are you just taking down, you know, eliminating your fuel? Are you say you're doing restoration work? What does that mean? And, you know, how are you doing restoration work if after you've been through and you've used your big machines, or you've done some, you know, minor logging, and or you've had fire? What did you finish your job and go out there and actually ensure that you're going to have a return on your work? And that's the part where they always fall down, and they always tell me, well, that's what we're supposed to be doing. But they're not. So my answering here is what I'm trying to get to is that they have to come to the point to understand that you know, tribally, you know what you're doing out there. I think that some tribes still need to be trained a little because many of their elders haven't been out there for so long. And so, you know, that's available. But at the same time, what I have since created is a management agreement that is going to allow me to go out and do my own burning on the forest, but at the same time get the forest folks to come out and be a part of it and train them as well. And so it's a big agreement that we have finally produced. And statewide, you know, whether you're state or federal, they all need to understand that their practices have not been the best. And so there is still room for them to grow. And there's so many programs out there that I refused in terms of, well, you know, you can get a red card. I said, no, I'm 67 years old. I'm not getting a red card. You know, well, some of your people can. I said, yeah, I got one guy who's a former hotshot, you know, and I've got another one that has a red card with machine going out on the line to do fires. That's not what we're talking about. And we're not talking about appeasing, you know, the tribe or whomever so that you can come online and watch what's going out there from, you know, half a mile away. Well, with the park, they'd have put me right online. They'd have dressed me up, put me out there, and said, no. You know, I'm fine right here along the edge, making sure that everything is right. And that concept was different than what the force, you know, is afraid to bring me out. And so I don't understand how these two concepts, why they're not as far as what here's two federal agencies, you know, 180 degrees apart. But little by little, we all need to keep moving in that direction. That, again, if we're partners in this, then we need to be partners. And that needs to be understood what that means, that, you know, you're not just using this as a checkbox, you know, that you've talked to us and consulted with us and that sort of thing.
Thanks, Ron. Does anyone else on the line have anything they want to share in that, in response to that question or Ron's thoughts?
Okay, I have something to share.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Irene Vasquez, and I'm from here in Milwaukee and Paiute from Yosemite. And I've been working for restoration in Yosemite for 7 seasons. And one big thing I want to know is talk about is how it's not just a one-time thing. It should be more looked at as a continual thing to involve tribal people, to bring back people. So it restores our own health, our own mental health, our social health, everything, and helps us get back onto our land and manage our practices in the way that we used to. And it's important to not just look at restoration as just a one-time, oh, project's finished, okay, move on to the next thing. But it should be looked more at as like a continual process, because that's how it was. We managed the land in that way. And that's not how a lot of restoration grants are written, but it needs to be looked at in the future, that it's continuing that relationship for the people to come back onto the land. That's anything. That's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, good. Did you get anything on the video yet?
Oh, yeah. I think I can play that. I also have one more question, or a few more questions for you too, Ron. You've got everyone thinking. Let's see. Jonathan Long has sent along some publications that I'll share along with the video that are authored by Ron and Frank Lake. So we'll make sure to share those with everybody. And someone asked, Ron, could you say a little bit more about yarrow as nature's neosporin? Did you mean it has medicinal uses or that it heals the land in some way? And thank you for the presentation.
Wow. I'm sure that I'll start off with the last part of that. That all the plants are needed for the land, for the soil. Without them, and I'm not sure if your meadow, would be whole. So when your meadow is been to where it's not functional, then what happens and your water table is too low. The big trees can reach down to almost 2 meters to suck up water. Your smaller trees probably need at least a meter down. But your plants have to be a little bit less than that. You'll get a few plants that might be struggling and trying to survive with some water that's been brought up from down below. But when your water returns, like what we have done to each one of our meadows, every one of our 6 meadows, our water is just running all year long and spread out all over the meadow. And when that happens, everything starts blossoming out. And if that plant wasn't there before, the birds will bring it back, the bear will bring it back, deer will bring it back, the raccoon, everybody brings it back, seed from someplace and puts it in there just like the invasives come in. But they need that water aspect. So if those plants are not there in place, then the soil's not going to be as healthy as it needs to be to also hold that water. So very important part. And we use that the plant like the Neosporum. It will stop the blood and heal you. So it's a healer to people, healer to the land.
Great, thanks, Ron. We also have a question about, let's see, what tasks do volunteers do? Weed pulling, but what else is the question?
Oh, well, pretty much everything. We get volunteers we have a number of tools. Most of our trained people are on the chainsaws, but then we have hand clippers and hand saws and brushers and people who go around and pick the cedar boughs and pine limbs and beat all the seeds for the native grasses like we used to do, so that you knock the seed down on the ground, and just every aspect that we can to try to keep enhancing the meadow in all phases.
Okay, great. Let's see. Someone mentioned they would like to share a comment, let's see, on Jane Allen.